Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Pralat Nrsimha, Pralat Nrsimha, Pralat Nrsimha, Jaya Pralat Nrsimha. Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha, Lakshmi Nrsimha, Lakshmi Nrsimha, Jaya Lakshmi Nrsimha. Jaya Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Radha Madhava, Shri Radhe. Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Srila Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Haribol, 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 Nitai Gaura Haribol. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Shotarashate Shishimat. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. ISKCON BBT Gründer Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Samaveta Gauda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. ISKCON Vatmana Guru Vrinda ki jai. Nitai Gauda Premanandi Hari Hari Bum. Alle Ehre seine versammelten Gottgeweihten Hare Krishna. Alle Ehre seine versammelten Gottgeweihten Hare Krishna. Alle Ehre seine versammelten Gottgeweihten Hare Krishna. Alle Ehre sei Shri Shri Guru und Gauranga, alle Ehre sei Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna, willkommen alle zusammen. Schön, dass ihr alle da seid. Erstmal die Frage, sprechen alle Deutsch? English? English also? You also speaking English better or? Aha, okay, but for you only English. Okay. Spricht hier jemand kein Englisch von? Alle sprechen Englisch? Gut, dann sprechen wir heute Englisch. So, today we continue to read from the Srimad-Bhagavad Gita as it is, with translations and purports by Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Today we're in the 9th chapter, knowledge of the Absolute, the most confidential knowledge, and we're reading verse 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aham kratur aham yakyah. Svadaham aham aushadam. Mantroham aham evajyam. Aham agnir aham hutam. Aham kraturaham yagyah Swadaham aham aushadham Mantroham aham evachyam Aham agniraham hutam Aham kraturaham yagyah Swadaham aham aushadham Mantroham aham evachyam Aham agniraham hutam. Prabhus. Aham kraturaham yakya Swadama aushadam Mantroham aham evakyam Aham agniraham hutam. Aham kraturaham yakya Swadaham aham aushadham Mantroham aham evajyam Aham agnir aham hutam. Matajis. Aham kraturaham yakyam Swadhaham aham aushadham Mantro aham evachyam Aham agnir aham hutam. Word for word translation. Aham, I, kratuhu, Vedic ritual. Aham, I, yakyaha, smriti, sacrifice. Swadha, oblation. Aham, I, aham, I, aushadham, healing herb. Mantraham, transcendental chant. Aham, I, aham, I, richtig. Eva, certainly. Ajyam, melted butter. Aham, I, Agnihi, fire. Aham, I, Hutam, offering. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Vedic sacrifice known as Jyotishtoma is also Krishna. And he is also the Mahayagya mentioned in the Smriti. The oblations offered to the Pitri-loka, or the sacrifice performed to please the Pitri-loka, considered as a kind of drug in the form of clarified butter, is also Krishna. The mantras chanted in this connection are also Krishna. And many other commodities made with milk products for offering in the sacrifices are also Krishna. The fire is also Krishna because fire is one of the 5 material elements and is therefore claimed as the separated energy of Krishna. In other words, the Vedic sacrifices recommended in the Karma Kanda division of the Vedas are in total also Krishna. Or in other words, those who are engaged in rendering devotional service unto Krishna are to be understood to have performed all the sacrifices recommended in the Vedas. Om Agyanatimirandasya Yaknanjana Shalakayam Shakshur Umilitam Yenam Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaham Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangung Langayati Gurim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatananam Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shri Vasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Krishna Bhutali Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharani Nivishesha Shivali Pashapti Deshitani. Okay, welcome again to everyone to today's evening class on the Bhagavad Gita. I'm going to read the verse again. Ahankratura hamyakya swadaham aham aushadam mantroham aham evajyam aham agnir aham hutam. But it is I who am the ritual, I the sacrifice, the offering to the ancestors, the healing herb, the transcendental chant. I am the butter and the fire and the offering. So, most of you must probably know the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is the talk between Arjuna, a great warrior, but also a great devotee of Lord Krishna, and Shri Krishna himself, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And it's all happening on a battlefield. Arjuna needs to fight against his family and friends on this battlefield, and is therefore lamenting that he needs to kill his relatives, which is a very sorrowful activity. And so Krishna then instructs him in spiritual topics, that he is not actually body, but the spirit soul. The spirit soul always returns, and so on, to convince him to do his duty. And Arjuna in this context asks different questions, and Krishna gives many elaborate answers. So we are now in the 9th chapter, verse 16, and the question that Arjuna asks is actually in the 8th chapter. There Arjuna asks a few questions, and this is from the 8th chapter, verse 2. Arjuna says there, or asks there, rather, who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudana? So this is the question which is connected with this verse. There are many questions Arjuna asks, but this is connected with this verse. And Arjuna asks here, who is the Lord of sacrifice? So who is the controller of sacrifice? Who is the overviewer of the sacrifice? And how does this person live in the body? So quite interestingly here, Arjuna already points out this Lord of the sacrifice, he lives in the body. We call it the super soul, God in the heart, who's always guiding us. And first I wanted to talk about what is actually a sacrifice. So this is also answered by Krishna a little bit earlier. This is in the 3rd chapter. There's the whole process of sacrifice, or even the cycle of sacrifice described. So let's look into that. Here Krishna says in verse 3:10, Saha yakya praja srishtva puruvacha prajapatihi anena prasavisyatvam esha vo svishta kamaduk. In the beginning of creation, the Lord, so he himself, of all creatures, sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu. So this is where sacrifices originated, and blessed them by saying, be thou happy by this yakya, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation. So first, let's step a little bit back. So here the verse starts immediately in the beginning of creation. So sometimes when we're on the street trying to give this knowledge to others, the questions come up. So in this world, if there's God, why is there suffering? Why is God not all merciful? Why is not everyone happy and connected with him? And Srila Prabhupada answers a few times that God himself, he didn't desire to create this world. We actually did. We forced God to create this material world full of suffering, full of duality. It's similar to a child who always begs his father for some certain play toy, or who really wants to touch the fire, the father may say, don't do it, it's going to hurt you. And he may repeat it many times. But the child, if it's consistently asking for it, if really wants this activity to happen, because children are normally like that, then the child may just touch the fire and learn by experience. So also, this is a similar case with us. We didn't want to have God in the center. We wanted to be independent. We wanted to do our own independent activities and enjoy independently, control independently. And that's why from God's kingdom, where we originate from, Krishna created this matter, this material world, so that we can enjoy Him and try our best to be in the center of all attention and play His role, play God's role. This happens because we got our free will. If we would be forced to be with God at all times, then there would be no real love, because love is always based on free will. No one can force anyone to love anyone else. Similarly, also God, He wants that we love Him out of our free will, not because we only have this one choice to be with Him. So by His mercy, He creates this playground for us so we can live out our different desires. So this is how the creation actually started, the material creation. So then in the beginning of this creation, actually, Sri Vishnu or Sri Krishna Himself, He created different living entities like human beings, like we are, the demigods who are controlling agencies of this universe, and also sacrifices for Vishnu. Vishnu is another name of the Supreme Person. Krishna, Vishnu. Is, not exactly the same, but very similar. And therefore, He gave us this opportunity to connect back with Him. So Srila Prabhupada, in many statements, he says, this world is actually just created so we can correct our rebellious nature towards God. And this is the opportunity to do sacrifice again, from yajna, also called. So in that time, at the beginning of creation, the sacrifice that we had to do was the fire sacrifice, which we will also perform today in the evening, actually. A very elaborate procedure. Many different mantras, sounds are chanted, different offerings are put into the fire to please Vishnu. And if we do it correctly, with the right intention, with the right consciousness, then Vishnu is pleased and we can connect back to Him and, as he states here, live happily and achieve liberation. So this is the normal procedure. And nowadays we have a little bit different sacrifices. We come to that later. And this is actually what we should do in this world. We should do those sacrifices, those yajnas, to purify ourselves, to connect back with God, and at the same time, in this material world, live happily and peacefully. So this is our great responsibility. And then furthermore, in the next verse, Shri Krishna describes, the demigods being pleased by sacrifices will also please you. And thus, by cooperation, between man and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So here this interesting point of demigods is mentioned. So in the verse before, Vishnu, Krishna says that those sacrifices are meant for Him. One should offer sacrifices for Him and live thus happily and achieve liberation, being freed from this material existence. And here he mentions the demigods. So Srila Prabhupada gives this example that Krishna or Vishnu is like the counselor, the chief of all the universes, and the demigods have different organizational services to do. For example, the Vedas describe there's a demigod who's controlling the rain. Indra is his name, and he's controlling the rain all over the universe, not only on Earth. Then there's a controlling deity for water called Varuna. He's controlling all the waters, and so on and so on. So many different responsible posts, responsible services in the universe created by God. And this is actually a very high position. It's said that also we as spirit souls could actually attain this service, this position. But even though it's a great responsibility, a great service for Vishnu, still the demigods are mostly a bit tinged by material propensities. So they have this tendency to control. They're not completely purified of that. That's why they get a high position, a high service, but still have this material aspect of controlling the material elements. Yes, so those are the demigods, and here Vishnu or Krishna says that we can please the demigods also by sacrifices. So in the Vedas, it's a very vast literature. There's one section called Karma Kanda. This is a section where different sacrifices, like for example, these fire sacrifices, are described for the demigods, for these universal agents. And if we please the demigods like this, then they will give us different facilities, like rain in the summertime, it's for growing the fields. Or, for example, there's the sun god, there will be sufficient sun, and so on and so on. Yes, and then Krishna continues in the next verse. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yajna, sacrifice, will supply all necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. So this is also quite a strong statement again, that Krishna says, okay, by the sacrifices, he says again, demigods, they are satisfied and they give us all that we need for living, air, rain, and so on. But if we don't give this back to them by this process of sacrifice again, then we are thieves. So this is actually nowadays society more or less. No one really knows about this process of sacrifices. There are some religious people who at least express some gratitude for what they get. They may even pray for their daily bread, but there's normally not so much contribution back to God or those agents who provide us with such things. So more or less, mostly the population nowadays are thieves. Now it's somehow still working out, even though it's quite unstable, because we have quite a good karma still, especially in the Western countries. There's prosperity because of our past good deeds, because we performed those sacrifices somehow or other in our past lives. But if we don't watch out, if we don't change our current tendencies of just consuming, just being a thief without giving back to the demigods or Vishnu himself, then we surely will fall down from this prosperity and wealth. Yes, and then there may be also a question being asked, okay, there's Vishnu, there's Krishna, who is the supreme being, and there are also the demigods. So what is the reason why should we actually worship demigods? Or why is now Krishna here describing in those few verses, after talking about himself, then describing this sacrifice to the demigods? And in this verse 3:12, Srila Prabhupada's purport, there's quite a good explanation of this. Srila Prabhupada writes here, in the Vedas, there are different kinds of yajnas prescribed for different kinds of demigods, but all are ultimately offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, Vishnu or Krishna is like the Yajna Purusha, the Lord of all sacrifices, as Arjuna asked in this question. For one who cannot understand what the personality of Godhead is, sacrifice to the demigods is recommended. So only for those who don't know Vishnu, don't know Krishna, they can also offer the sacrifices to the demigods. According to the different material qualities of the persons concerned, different types of yajnas are recommended in the Vedas. Worship of different demigods is also on the same basis, namely according to different qualities. So those are the different gunas, the different energies of the material world. We will talk about that shortly. For example, the meat eaters are recommended to worship the goddess Kali, the ghastly form of material nature. Shri Shri Prad Lakshmi Singadev Bhagavan Ki Jai. And before the goddess of the sacrifice of animals is recommended. But for those who are in the mode of goodness, the transcendental worship of Vishnu is recommended. But ultimately, all yajnas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. So here Srila Prabhupada nicely explains why the demigod worship is also recommended. So one reason is because we're all in different modes of nature. So there are 3 different modes of nature which are always controlling us as we are in the material world. The Bhagavad Gita explains Pakriti Kriyamanani Gunaikamani Sadavashaha Ahankara Vimudatma Kataham Iti Manyati. That means the confused conditioned soul in this material world is thinking that he's acting, even though all activities are actually performed by material nature, by the material modes. So everything is pervaded by those material energies, which are of three kinds. There's the tamaguna, or ignorance in English. This is the lowest mode of nature, the lowest energy, which in ourself is shown by, for example, laziness, too much sleep, grief, depressive nature, depressive tendencies, and so on and so on. And also outwardly, something is very dirty, very destroyed, and yeah, this is like the mode of ignorance. Then there's the mode of passion, which is shown in human beings by strong desires, very strong endeavor for worldly achievements, greediness for more and more, and the mind of such a person is very much perturbed and agitated. And there's the sattva guna. This is the highest mode of nature which one can achieve in the material world, and this is being inside very peaceful, equipoised, and one has clear thoughts, one can think clearly, and one can understand spiritual knowledge on this platform. So it's said that we need to establish actually the sattva guna to understand and also realize spiritual knowledge. And outwardly it is shown by cleanliness, order, purified state of being in all circumstances. So those are the three different modes of nature, and everything is pervaded by that. As I said, also matter itself, material things are pervaded by it, and also different personalities. And we are controlled by those gunas, and that's why we have different sorts of worship also. Nowadays many people worship different kind of celebrities, which is mostly in a mode of ignorance or passion. Then the worship of demigods, there's also different kinds. Srila Prabhupada mentions here the worship of goddess Kali, which is a ghastly form of material nature. So there's this sacrifice of flesh being recommended in some parts of the Vedas. So we cannot eat meat like this. This will be a great sin, and we will get bad karmic reactions for it. But we could perform the sacrifice to goddess Kali, and this is quite difficult. From what I heard, this is once a month at a special date. We need to offer a goat, and we need to chant in the ear of the goat that this lifetime I will kill you, and next lifetime you will kill me. So then at some point we may get to the understanding, okay, why am I actually doing this? Is it really worth it to eat this meat? To just get killed by this kind of living entity in next life, or should I maybe switch to a more sattvic diet? So this is surely a sacrifice in the mode of ignorance, but it's a Vedic sacrifice, so it's a recommended way to elevate ourselves gradually to the mode of goodness. And yes, there are different modes and different worship forms. This is more in the mode of ignorance, and then there's mode of passion, worship also, and there's mode of goodness worship, which is also many types of worship of the demigods. For example, there's the worship of Surya, the sun god, and it's said Surya gives very nice health. It's a very sattvic worship, and also for a healthy and good life. But this is still in the material mode of goodness, so it's not completely on the spiritual platform. And then Srila Prabhupada continues here and says, but ultimately, all yagyas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. So those sacrifices, those different offerings to the demigods, which are described in the Vedas, they are meant to elevate ourselves gradually. So if we can come to the platform that we can worship Vishnu or Krishna, there's no more need for those all different sacrifices to the demigods. But this is not so easy, because what is described in the Vedas, the sacrifice to the demigods, everyone can enter that. But devotional service to Krishna, devotional service to Vishnu, this is a little bit difficult to attain. Because, as mentioned, one has to be at least on a good platform of goodness. Not that one is completely purified, but at least some goodness is established to really understand and cultivate this knowledge and worship. And also, Krishna himself, he doesn't really give this devotional service so easily. Krishna is the supreme controller, so just by his mercy we can actually start to practice devotional service and worship him. But Krishna is also a little bit picky with who he decides to come close to him. Because yes, if one knows the supreme controller and has a good relationship with him, then one can get a lot of benefit. And Krishna doesn't want to be misused. Krishna is a very, very subtle person. Srila Prabhupada also once said, be very careful how you approach Krishna, because he's God, he's very subtle, he's a person. We know it from ourselves. If we get misused by someone for some benefit of them, then we feel very hurt. And Krishna wants to protect himself against that, or more to say, his inner energy is protecting himself against that. So Krishna doesn't grant so many people devotional service. That's what we see also in this yuga. So less people are actually practicing this path, because there's some purity in the heart needed. So yes, we elevate ourselves gradually, and by this offering of sacrifices. And now we more or less have an overview. Okay, what is a sacrifice? To whom is it performed? Who is the Yakya Purusha, the Yakya Party, the Lord of Sacrifice, or the enjoyer of sacrifice? And then in verse 314, it's a quite known verse, Krishna gives the cycle of sacrifice, which is also very important to know actually. Anat bhavanti bhutani pajanyat anasampavaha yajnat bhavati pajanyo yajna karma samudbhavaha. All living entities, all living bodies subsist on food grains. That's one part, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yakya, sacrifice, and yakya is born of prescribed duties. So this is the cycle of sacrifice. So first off, which is last in this verse, is performing prescribed duties. So that's also one point what Krishna really points out in the Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna, you have to perform your duty. You are a kshatriya, a warrior, so you have to fight. It's very important for us all to know our duty and also perform it correctly. In our state of being, if we live in a temple, surely we get a prescribed duty by the authorities. We perform different kinds of devotional service as good as we can. If we live at home, we also have different kinds of prescribed duties. Also some material duties we have to perform to sustain the body or sustain our family. This is also very important to do. But then we should also know that, the center should be Krishna. Krishna should be the focus, and we should cultivate Krishna consciousness for the time being. So those prescribed duties, in Vedic times they were regarding the Varna and Ashrama. That's a bigger topic, but they have to be performed. And by those prescribed duties, then if we do it correctly, according to the Vedas, according to spiritual master, according to different spiritual authorities that we seek help from, then yakya is born out of it. So also in Vedic times, if those people from that time, they performed their prescribed duties according to the Varnashrama system, then they could perform the sacrifice to the demigods or to Vishnu himself. And as we heard before, by the sacrifice they are satisfied and they get everything that they need for living and liberation. And by the sacrifice, as mentioned here, third point is rains come. So rain, next point would be then, is necessary for grains or actually any kind of plant that we consume. So this is very important to sustain our body, to live in this world happily and peacefully. And yes, this is for sustenance of our body, and then it goes all back again. By sustaining our body, we can perform our prescribed duty, and by the prescribed duty again, we can have entrance to sacrifice. So this is the whole cycle. It starts with the prescribed duties, the yakya performance, then rains come or different elements that we need for sustenance, then grains, plants grow, we can sustain our body. By a sustained body, a healthy body, we can again perform our prescribed duties. So this is the cycle how this sacrifice comes into being. So that's also one point why Srila Prabhupada mentions a few times there's actually no scarcity at all in this world. The only scarcity is actually the scarcity of Krishna consciousness. So if the whole world would be Krishna conscious, then everything can be easily supplied by all the demigods or Krishna himself. So this is actually that's why it's our family business to spread this mission and spread the Krishna conscious movement as good as we can, so everyone can perform the sacrifice of chanting the holy name, and we can all live peaceful and happily and attain liberation. So now we know more or less who is the Lord of sacrifice, how is sacrifice performed, the cycle of sacrifice. And then next question would be, what actually is to be sacrificed? What is our sacrifice in this age? What can we do? So Shri Krishna doesn't expect so much. He just expects everything that we can give. That's in verse 927. Yat karoshi, yat ashnasi, yat juhoshi dadasi yat, yat tapasyasi kauntaya, tat kurishva mat apanam. So Krishna says there, everything that you eat, everything that you do, everything that you give away in charity, and every kind of austerity you do it for me, do it for Krishna. And this sounds quite simple, but inside it could be a little bit more difficult, because it's all about the consciousness actually. That's why it's movement for Krishna consciousness. In temple life, it's a little bit more simple, I guess, because we get reminded of Krishna many times. We have a whole program in the morning and evening. We try to fill our mind with Krishna consciousness, Krishna conscious literatures and topics. So then we might be able to think about Krishna also in our daily activities. So very important is this consciousness or this intention that before we do any action, before we eat, before we offer, we think about Krishna. We have this intention to please Krishna. For example, in cooking in our temple, if we buy the food stuff, then we buy it with the consciousness, okay, this is actually a yakya, a sacrifice for Krishna. I offer my time and my activities to buy this. Or if we have it from the garden, then the gardener or the devotees in the garden, they think, okay, this is for the Lord, this is for Nrsingadev, when they plant the seed, when they cultivate the plant, when they harvest it and they bring it to the kitchen, then the cook is in the consciousness and also the helpers that, okay, this is now for Krishna, for Nrsingadev. We try to make a good effort in the service. And then there's the offering going on with different mantras to Nrsingadev. And then the pujari is in the consciousness, okay, this is food for the Lord, and then afterwards devotees may partake in it. And then also when we eat the prasadam, when we honor the prasadam, then we also pray beforehand, yes, this is actually Krishna's mercy, and by Krishna's mercy we can control our tongue by the prasadam, and so on and so on. So this is very important, this consciousness actually. And yes, but also try, which I'm not perfect at, just very simply at the beginning of any activity or any service, I try to think, okay, this is now for Guru and Krishna. And then while I'm doing the activity, which is a little bit more difficult, while I'm engaged in different sorts of things, I try to think, okay, why do I do it? Okay, it's for the pleasure of Guru and Krishna. And also afterwards, if I achieve any fruit out of it, any result, then I think, okay, this is actually all for Guru and Krishna. So this is a small thing, but it's just a switch in consciousness, and we can set our intention like that, and then we can actually try to offer everything that we do, that we think, whatever, offer to Krishna. And also at home, we can practice this quite easily. In the verse beforehand, Krishna says, Patram pushpam palam toyam, yome bhaktya parashati, tataham bhakti uparitam, ashnami prayatat manaha. So whoever offers Sri Krishna with love and devotion, water, a fruit, a leaf, then Sri Krishna will surely accept it. So everyone to his own capacity can do it at home. Also, I note for myself, before I came to the temple, I had a little, actually at the beginning I had a little Hanuman deity, Hanuman statue. Somehow or other I got it from esoteric shop. And then I was just chanting the Hanuman mantra. I was just offering my time and my concentration to Hanuman, offering a Hanuman mantra all the time. Then at some point I got the books of Srila Prabhupada, and that answered many, many questions for me. I tried to chant the Maha Mantra, and then came a little Krishna statue into my life. I had this on my little desk at home. And then I started to chant for Krishna, chant in front of Krishna, started to offer the holy name to him. And then I found out about prasadam, how to prepare prasadam. I started cooking for Krishna, trying to make it in the consciousness. This is actually for the Lord. Very simple preparations, doesn't have to be very elaborate like here in the kitchen. We have such amazing opulent prasadam. That's the confirmation. And yeah, I started to cook something, just put a plate in front of Krishna and started to make my own prayer. Srila Prabhupada at least once, he also mentions You don't need to know all the mantras of offering. You can just prepare something nicely for Krishna, put it in front of this deity, the statue, and then say your own prayers, chant Hare Krishna 3 times, and leave it there for a few minutes, and then it can be prasadam. You can take it afterwards as the mercy of the Lord. So I started like this, very simply, and everyone can do this at home. One can put some pictures of Krishna, have a little altar like this, then prepare some simple food stuff, offer to the picture of Krishna, start chanting Hare Krishna at home. I also did it without the japa even. I just sitting down in meditation pose and just mumbling the Maha Mantra in front of me. It's a very simple process and everyone can do it, even if it's just water or a leaf or whatever one has. Anyone in any part of the world can start this process of Krishna consciousness. And then with time, if the desire gets stronger and Krishna manifests more and more, then the worship can even be more elaborate at some point. So this is how we can perform sacrifice, who's the Lord of sacrifice, and yes, what is the cycle of sacrifice. And today in the evening, also we can see it live in a few hours, and actually 1 hour, we have an amazing fire sacrifice. And this is actually the process of liberation, the main yajna of the Treta Yuga. So the Vedas describe there are 4 different yugas. The Satya Yuga. In that time frame, the people were much more religious, and the main process for liberation at that time was Ashtanga Yoga or meditation. It said at that time people lived also much longer and could concentrate much better. Then there's the Treta Yuga, and this was the time of fire sacrifice. Great kings performed great sacrifices at that time with very elaborate worship, many millions of gold coins spent in these sacrifices at that time. So they were much more wealthy, so they could perform those sacrifices in an elaborate way. And then there was the Dvapara Yuga, the yuga just before this. The main process was deity worship, worshipping the deity. Also the people were much more refined. They also had much more wealth and could worship the deity in a very elaborate way. And all those processes are still to some extent helpful. But in this Kali Yuga, as we know, the main process is the chanting of the holy name. And also Srimad-Bhagavatam describes Krishna Vanam Tvisha Krishnam Sangopangasta Pashadam Yagya Sankirtanai Prayai Yajantihi Sumedasaha. That in this age of Kali, the age of hypocrisy and quarrel, the people with enough brain substance or intelligence, they will worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who appears in a complexion which is Krishna, not black, or also explained as golden, and by chanting congregational Sankirtan, the holy name of the Lord. And this personality of Godhead appears with his companions, with his paraphernalia, and also with his weapons. So we know this Kali Yuga avatar, the form of Krishna appearing in this age, is our Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, sitting here in the background. And he appears with all his associates to spread the holy name of the Lord. So his preaching was going from village to village with a great congregation of people, sometimes thousands, tens of thousands of people were together chanting the holy name. Sometimes we have here the Singadev Chaturdasi festival once a year. And then we have hundreds of devotees here. The complete temple room is fully packed and everyone is chanting. And this is such a powerful experience, such an elevating experience. So one can only imagine how it would be with 10,000 people chanting the holy name or 100,000 people chanting the holy name. It was such an amazing experience at Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's times because he converted more or less everyone to the chanting of the holy name, the Yuga Dharma. And it's said that his weapons were actually his beauty. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was very beautiful, very attractive. Everyone who just saw him was captivated. But also the holy name. So in this yuga, it's said that Krishna, he doesn't annihilate the miscreants, vinashaya shadushkrita, but he actually just annihilates the demonic tendency in the heart. That's by the chanting of the holy name. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is so merciful. He's not against the demons, not fighting against the demons, but only about the tendency of demonic life in the heart, which is in most of the hearts nowadays in Kali Yuga. Yes, and also the stated if some of the people at that time could escape those weapons of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and move away from the chanting of the holy name, then the Senapati Bhakta was sent. It's mentioned in one book called Chaitanya Mangala. This was actually long before Srila Prabhupada appeared, hundreds of years beforehand. It's mentioned there that whoever was fleeing away from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to different parts of the world, then Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will send the Senapati Bhakta, the general of all devotees, to bring them all to happy Krishna conscious life. And so many of our scholars and devotees firmly believe that this is Srila Prabhupada, our founder Acharya, who's mentioned in this verse hundreds of years ago. And yesterday we watched a very nice movie, which is also online on YouTube, the Hare Krishna movie, the Swami, the movement, and the mantra, something like this. And by his grace, Srila Prabhupada's grace, actually we skipped so many lifetimes, we saved so much time, because normally we would need to gradually elevate ourselves by this performance of yajna. And I guess most of us, we were also in a position where we're not even performing anything prescribed in the Vedas anyway. So Srila Prabhupada saved so much time for us that we could immediately jump to this highest perfection of devotional life and immediately connect with Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, actually in this one short lifetime, by the chanting of the holy name, we can attain this highest perfection and go back to the spiritual world, back with Krishna in Goloka Vrindavan. And as also mentioned in the verse we read, there's one nice verse as a conclusion in Bhagavad Gita 8:28. This is the last verse of the 8th chapter. Yes, 1 minute. This is a good concluding word. Vedeshu yakyashu tapashu chaiva danishu yat punya palam pratishtam adyeti tat savamidam viridva yogi param stanam upaiti shatyam. A person who accepts the path of devotional service is not bereft of the results derived from studying the Vedas, performing sacrifices, undergoing austerities, giving charity, or pursuing philosophical and fruitive activities. Simply by performing devotional service, he attains all these, and at the end he reaches the supreme eternal abode. Yes, so let's go home, back to Godhead, together. Thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any questions or comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, when you're reading Shiva Purana, there's mentioned that Shiva is the highest. So
that's an interesting question. I didn't expect this now.
Why is this written?
Okay, I mean, first one has to probably look at the Sanskrit, what is really the verse, because I don't know now which verse numbers is, where is it written exactly, what is the Sanskrit, because there can be many interpretations of the Vedic texts. And yeah, I know that, or I heard, never discussed, but I heard that many Shiva worshippers, they say in the Shiva Purana, it's mentioned more clearly that Shiva is the supreme. Yeah, they have their pramanas, they have their evidences, which may be also to some extent acceptable, because they have their own explanations, their own acharyas. But we have own pramanas, and for example, Srimad-Bhagavatam, I don't know, it should be in the 4th canto, but I don't know where exactly. But it's a chapter called Shiva's Prayers. And it's the prayers of Shiva of 50 verses or something, where he's worshipping Aniruddha and Sankarshan, different forms of Vishnu, and very many elaborate, nice prayers. And also different parts of the Srimad-Bhagavatam, we know that Shiva is worshipping Vishnu. For example, the Mohini Murti pastime, where Shiva is bewildered by a female form of Krishna. Also in the Srimad-Bhagavatam 8th canto should be. Yeah, so we have our own evidences from our scriptures, and I didn't study the Shiva Purana, so I cannot really say much, but for me it's quite evident by such prayers by Shiva to Vishnu or by the Mohini Murti pastime that somehow it seems like there's someone higher than Shiva. And also, the devotee once said a quite interesting thing, that Shiva is always in meditation, and then the question is, who's Shiva meditating on? Or what is Shiva meditating on? If he's the supreme, why would he meditate? Why would he not just have fun like Krishna? Nothing to do. I don't know if you had maybe a discussion with someone who said this, or if you maybe read it yourself, I don't know, but yeah, it would be good to know the Sanskrit, the verse, and then one can go into it and discuss, and then, yeah. That's all I can say.
I was reading a nice book, it was called Who is the Supreme? By Gokul Chandra Prabhu from Salem, and he explained all these things. You mentioned some points already in your lecture, and it's in the Shiva Purana it said Shiva is the highest to give some faith to the followers that they at least following Vedic culture.
Exactly.
But when we have the different Brahmanas, then Shiva Purana is in the mode of ignorance, and so then we have to take Bhagavad Purana, who is in the mode of goodness, and it's always higher Brahmana. And so, yeah, it's the same conclusion as you said.
But it's a good point. I forgot to mention also, because this demigod worship is also very good, because then the conditioned souls, they start to accept one authority, at least someone higher. So if there are such statements in the Shastra that give them faith in that demigod, it's actually very good, so they can gradually elevate themselves. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Hare Krishna.
Even I had a lot of confusion on this point. Our home god is Nandi. Actually, we are Shiva followers. Actually, Lingayats. We are Lingayats. Actually, even I had a lot of even we pray Lakshmi Narayana. We do Diwali and Shiva equally. After long years thinking, I come into the conclusion: who is the supreme? I meditate earlier Shiva, Supreme God and same time I read or hear about Krishna or Sri Vishnu, and then I understood it's beyond our, we are just comparing. This is not we cannot do this one actually, so we have to be beyond our thinking. It's an extreme high level, high level things, which with our level of thinking we can't achieve there. So this is what I understood actually. Because
it's a good understanding, yeah, good attitude.
Separate situation or separate time, the supreme will change. I think it depends. Harihara, it's Ayappa, he born, you know that one, right? Mahesh is that because of together he born and then he killed the evil. Harihara son,
form.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't.
The form.
This I would not really confirm that the supreme changes.
Exactly.
Because the absolute truth has to be always the same, because it's eternally the absolute truth. I mean, Shiva is also mentioned in different scriptures. Vaishnavayam Yatha Shambhu is also said that Shiva is the greatest of all Vaishnavas, and as you said, this is beyond any of our material understanding, so we cannot understand it or grasp it with the mind.
Yeah.
So our evidences are just the Vedic scriptures, and there are different statements, but in our line, our tradition, yes, we believe Vishnu or Krishna is the supreme, and then Shiva is very high, but not exactly the same.
Yeah, some says Sri Vishnu born and Brahma born from Shiva, and some says Shiva and Brahma born from his Navi, something.
Yeah, different opinions.
Yes, different opinions, exactly. Thank you.
Satyaraj Prabhu, yourself. It's just for a live stream, because it's also...
So, thank you very much for the lecture, first of all. I would have two quite technical questions. I don't know if
try to answer in 30 seconds.
Maybe just for short comment on the discussion of Shiva. There is quite famous verse, I think, coming from Padma Purana, where Shiva sits with his consort. Parvati, and says on these topics about what is the highest. He says, Aradhananam Sarvesham Vishnur Aradhanam Param. So Vishnu Aradhanam Param, from all sorts of worship, Vishnu worship is the highest. So if Shiva himself says that, well,
there's the evidence.
Yeah. Even further, he says, Tasmat Parataram Devi Tadiyanam Samarchanam. And even higher than that is the worship of his devotees. But in terms of worshipping the Supreme Person, Vishnu or Aradhanam Param. Also in Bhagavatam, in the story of churning the nectar, I think it's in the story of churning the nectar, that many demigods approach to Shiva and in fact address him as Bhagavan.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Which is term that one can interpret.
Yeah.
It's open to interpretation. It means Bhagavan, the possessor of opulences. Yeah. Sometimes this word is also used for addressing Narada. It's Bhagavan. It's also the word addressed for addressing Krishna. They are in fact all possessor of opulences, but still there are some other shastra which define the supreme person, or let's say supreme controller, Ishvara, Parama, Krishna, etc., etc. Okay, just shortly on this discussion. Are we finishing right now?
You can maybe ask the question then.
Yeah, so my technical question would be, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this point, that all yagyas are ultimately meant for Vishnu. Even the yagyas, even offerings for demigods are ultimately meant for Vishnu. What's meant exactly by that paragraph that you read?
So that, for example, the demigod worship is actually also meant for Vishnu.
Exactly.
Okay, that's a good point. Yeah, as there's one example given in the Vedas that actually if one waters the root of the tree, then everything else of the tree is also watered. So if we try to separately water the leaves and different kinds of fruits on a tree, it doesn't have the same effect. So it's said that Vishnu himself is like the root of the tree, and everything that we offer actually belongs to him, or is best capacity used if we offer it to Vishnu. But regarding now the demigods worship, and then it's actually redirected to Vishnu. Yes, because Krishna also explains that all the powers of the demigods and even the faith of the devotees of the demigods actually comes from himself. So if we understand that Vishnu is the supreme controller, Vishnu is the super soul in the heart, which gives all strength, which gives all material elements to those who offer sacrifices, then we understand actually the demigods, they're also part and parcels of Vishnu, they're also servants of Vishnu, so they also redirect their worship to Vishnu. And by that, they satisfy Vishnu. I'm not expert on this field, but what I understood is that even in such Vedic sacrifices, there's also Vishnu present, or at least on the altar, Vishnu present, as the Yagyapati in one purport, Srila Prabhupada also mentions this. So the demigods know actually our Lord is Vishnu, Krishna, and we should worship him, give the honor and sacrifice to him. At least it's my understanding. I don't know if it's complete, but if we worship the demigods, we indirectly worship Vishnu, and the demigods actually are servants of Vishnu, so they give their share, their wealth, their sacrifice actually also to Vishnu. So best is to just worship Vishnu or Krishna directly. Probably you could elaborate more on it, but maybe on tomorrow's class, Satyaraj Prabhu was giving tomorrow's class, then he can maybe also say something about this. Sorry for this answer, and thank you for your attention. Sorry that we're a little late with the Gaurarati. Now we have a beautiful worship of our deities, Sri Sri Prad Lakshmana Singadev, and we can sing one amazing mantra by one of our acharyas, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, and then the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, and then afterwards we conclude with the Singha Yakya. Srimad-Bhagavad Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Subala Gopal ki jai.